Morning, guys. Today we are going to learn the simple past tense. The content of this lesson is number one, we are going to explain the use of the simple past tense. Number two, we are going to see the time expressions for this tense. Number three, we are going to see the conjugation of the verb to be as well as the negative and interrogative form. And then we are going to continue with irregular verbs, then irregular verbs, and we are going to move on to the negative form and finally to the interrogative form. Now, when can we use the simple past tense? Well, we are going to use it to talk about completed actions in the past. Okay?
Okay.
And then the time expressions. The time expressions guide us to know when the action takes place. So in this case, the time expressions for the simple past tense are yesterday, last, and we can say, for example, last week, last month, last year, last class, etc. Ago, so we can say 2 days ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, and etc. Now, let's see the verb to be. Let's remember that the verb to be is an independent verb, okay? And the conjugation of the verb to be in the simple past tense is I was, he was, she was, it was, we were, you were, and they were. So we can say, for example, I was a good student. He was a good student. She was a good student. Or I can say, it was in the library, we were in the library, you were in the library, and they were in the library. Because remember, the verb to be has two meanings in Spanish, ser and estar. So depending of the meaning is the complement that you are going to use. Let's move on. Now, about the negative form of the verb to be, we just have to place the particle not after the conjugation of the verb to be. So I'm going to say I was not, he was not, she was not, it was not, we were not, you were not, they were not. And we can say, for example, I was not a good student, or he was not a good student. Or I can say, we were not in the library. They were not in the library. And remember, in English, we can use contractions. So the contraction of the verb to be in the negative form, we can use wasn't instead of was not, or weren't instead of were not. Both ways are correct. Just remember, the full form is formal, and the contractions are used in informal language. And then the interrogative form of the verb to be, we just have to move the subject and the conjugation of the verb to be so we can have the question. For example, was I a good student? Was he a good student? Was she a good student? Or imagine that some of your classmates missed the English class and the teacher asked you, were you in the library or were they in the library? So you are going to answer, was he a good student? Yes, he was, or no, he wasn't. Was she in the library? Yes, she was, or no, she wasn't. Okay? And that is the way that we are going to use the verb to be. recordemos, el verbo to be es un verbo independiente. Solito vamos a usar su conjugación y en base a esta vamos a formar su negación y la forma interrogativa en el marco de las yes-no questions. Preguntas sí o no. Then we are going to continue and let's talk about the regular verbs. The conjugation of the regular verbs, we are going to add the or ed to the verb. For example, watch, watch it. Cook, cooked. Clean, cleaned. Close, closed. Si el verbo termina en E, únicamente agregamos la letra D y ya tenemos el tiempo pasado del verbo regular. Pero si el verbo no termina en la letra E, vamos entonces a agregar la terminación ed al verbo, como lo estamos viendo en los ejemplos. So we can say, for example, I watched TV yesterday. My mother cooked Italian food last week. My brother cleaned his bedroom 2 days ago. My father closed the door last night. Como podemos ver, los verbos regulares se ajustan a esta regla. Agregamos la D o la ED a la terminación del verbo. La D si el verbo ya termina en E y ED si el verbo no termina en E. But what about the irregular verbs? ¿Qué hay acerca de los verbos irregulares? Bueno, the irregular verbs, they change or they don't. La conjugación de los verbos irregulares es diferente, puesto que algunos de ellos cambian completamente su forma del presente al pasado y algunos de ellos no cambian, sino que permanecen igual. Y en este último caso, en ocasiones el verbo lo único que va a cambiar es la pronunciación. Se escriben igual en presente y en pasado, pero se pronuncian de manera diferente. For example, buy, bought, go, went, read, read, put. So we can say, for example, I bought some books last weekend. Joseph went to the movies yesterday. Leonard read a new comic 2 days ago. Y como podemos ver en el caso del verbo leer, en presente decimos read, en pasado decimos read, ¿sí? Y ahí, pues lo vamos a darnos cuenta que nos referimos a una acción por el complemento, por el contexto, y no al color rojo. Now, before we continue, let me tell you that the regular and irregular verbs are going to use an auxiliary. And the auxiliary for the simple past tense is did. A partir de aquí, vamos a utilizar el auxiliar del pasado para estos verbos regulares e irregulares. Y el auxiliar del pasado es el auxiliar did. And we are going to use this auxiliary to make negative sentences. For example, I did not watch movies yesterday. My mother didn't cook last weekend. My father didn't close the door last night. We didn't eat pizza 2 days ago. They didn't stay at home yesterday. And let's remember that we can use contractions. In this case, we can use the full form of the auxiliary and say did not, or we can use the contraction and we can say didn't. Aquí en la parte de arriba tenemos nosotros lo que sería la estructura de las oraciones en forma negativa. Y como podemos observar, los verbos en la forma negativa están en su forma base. El complemento y la expresión de tiempo en algunas ocasiones pueden ser omitidas. Por eso aparecen entre paréntesis. Now, about the interrogative form. Again, we are going to use the auxiliary did to make questions. Mhm. So I can ask you, for example, did you go to Mexico City last week? And you are going to answer, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. Depends, okay? It depends on the person. Did your father close the door last night? No, he didn't. Or yes, he did. Did your mother cook yesterday? Yes, she did. Or you can say, no, she didn't. Did they visit you 3 weeks ago? No, they didn't. Or you can say, yes, they did. Mhm. And in here, let's pay attention to the structure. Remember, the yes, no questions start with the auxiliary. Las preguntas sí o no van a comenzar con este auxiliar del pasado, que es el did. Finally, I would like to show you 2 additional examples. The first one is the use of the simple past tense in a conversation, in a dialogue with one of your friends. For example, it says, David and Lionel. David asked, how was your weekend? Lionel says, it was great. David, really? What did you do? Lionel, last Saturday I went to La Presa de la Boca with my parents. Later, I went to the movies with my cousins. We watched a horror movie. Then, on Sunday, I dated my girlfriend. I picked her up in her house. I met her parents, and they were very kind with me. David, that's awesome. Lionel, sure. What about you? And then you can share your experience. What did you do? Este es uno de los contextos en los que podemos usar el pasado simple, cuando compartimos aquellas experiencias que vivimos en tiempo pasado, dentro de un diálogo. But we can also use the simple past tense to narrate an anecdote. También podemos usar el pasado simple para narrar una anécdota personal. Y en carácter de anécdota, recordemos que las anécdotas van de diferentes tipos, ¿verdad? Hay anécdotas académicas, anécdotas personales, anécdotas laborales y de todos los tonos. In this case, I use a scary anecdote. En este caso, les voy a compartir una anécdota de terror, de algo que pasó. And it says, last weekend, I had a very scary experience. It was a cold and stormy night. I was home alone. My parents went out with a group of friends. My brother was at his girlfriend's house. I decided to have a good time on my own. I went downstairs and stayed in the living room. I watched 2 horror movies. At the end of the second movie, the lights went off. It was very dark inside the house. Suddenly, I saw shadows outside. So I watched through the windows. I heard a scream. Therefore, I ran up to my bedroom. And let's imagine what happened next. Y en este caso, como pueden ver, estoy utilizando la conjugación de los verbos, tanto del verbo to be como de los verbos regulares y irregulares, para narrar una anécdota personal. Last but not least. Por último, pero no menos importante, comparto contigo unos tips. Recuerda, practice makes perfect. La práctica hace al maestro. Mientras más practiquemos, mejor va a ser nuestro desempeño en un segundo idioma. So, write. Escribe tanto como te sea posible y comparte tus escritos con tus profesores o con tus compañeros para recibir cierta retroalimentación. Speak. Habla. Mientras más usemos el pasado simple en nuestras pláticas, más vamos a ir reteniendo la información. And share, comparte. Comparte todos tus progresos con tus profesores y con tus compañeros. Habla, escribe, and try to make learning a living experience. Thank you. Gracias por haber llegado hasta el final. Te recomiendo conseguir una lista de verbos. Ya que en esta lista de verbos tú podrás ver cuáles son los verbos regulares y cuáles son los verbos irregulares. No hay una regla para saber cuál es un verbo regular y cuál es un verbo irregular. Eso solo lo podremos aprender a través de una lista ya preestablecida de estos verbos. Te invito a buscarlas en la web o bien solicitarlas a tu maestro para que te las proporcione y podamos poner manos a la obra. Thank you very much.